Women often come back after rejecting you because confidence, growth, and detachment shift the dynamic. When you no longer chase, you become mysterious, magnetic, and valuable. Regret, curiosity, and comparison pull them back. Remember, rejection is rarely final. It's often a test of your strength, self-worth, and resilience. When a woman rejects you, in that moment, she feels she has the upper hand. It boosts her ego to know that someone desired her enough to pursue, and she had the power to say no. But what happens when the man she rejected doesn't linger, doesn't chase, doesn't keep validating her existence? That's where the ego factor comes into play. Women often underestimate how much their sense of self-worth is tied to the attention they receive. The very moment that attention disappears, the rejection begins to haunt them. It is no longer about love or even attraction. It becomes about regaining that power, that validation, that feeling of being wanted. The ego doesn't like silence. It thrives on confirmation that it is important, valuable, and superior. When you detach and live your life without begging for her approval, the ego is denied its fuel. Suddenly, she wonders why you aren't broken, why you aren't chasing, why you seem unaffected. The very confidence she overlooked before becomes the magnet that pulls her curiosity back. She might start testing the waters again, sending small signals, trying to see if she can still control your attention. If she gets nothing, the rejection she once handed out begins to turn into an inner conflict. She may not even realize it at first, but her return is often more about soothing her ego than genuine affection. This is why many women circle back after rejecting a man. It isn't always about missing you as a person. It's about missing the feeling of being wanted by you. When that is taken away, the ego feels an emptiness that needs to be filled. And in that process, you suddenly become the one holding the power. The irony is that your rejection of her, whether direct or indirect through indifference, is what makes her ego panic. She expected you to keep her on a pedestal, but when you refused, she began questioning her own worth. The ego factor explains why people often return to situations they once dismissed. It isn't about compatibility or even love. It's about reclaiming control. For women, the idea that someone they rejected can thrive without them shakes their sense of superiority. It forces them to see you differently, not as the man who wanted them, but as the man who doesn't need them. That shift creates a tension the ego can't ignore. So when women come back after rejection, recognize the psychology at play. It is less about them realizing they made a mistake and more about them craving the validation they once had. Your role is to understand this dynamic clearly. If you've grown, if you've built yourself into someone stronger, more confident and independent, then you're not bound to her ego games anymore. She may have rejected you once, but it's the absence of your attention that forces her to reconsider. And that in itself reveals just how much power you truly hold when you choose yourself first. When a woman rejects you, she often believes there are better options waiting for her. It's human nature to think the unknown holds something greater, that maybe the next person will fulfill desires you couldn't. At first, the decision feels justified, even empowering, but time has a way of revealing truths. Once she begins comparing the new experiences with the way you treated her, the cracks start to show. Maybe the new man doesn't give her the same attention, or his presence lacks the warmth you once brought. Maybe he talks, but doesn't listen. Maybe he stands beside her, but doesn't really see her. The comparison trap begins quietly, but it grows louder every time reality fails to meet her expectations. What most women don't realize in the moment of rejection is that true connection is rare. They mistake consistency for boredom and mistake effort for weakness. When she sees how effortlessly you were available, how genuine your intentions were, she assumes it can be easily found again. But then she steps into the real world and realizes that respect, kindness, and patience are not traits every man carries. The very qualities she dismissed now become the qualities she starts to crave again. The trap lies in her mind as she measures others against you, replaying the past and noticing the differences she once ignored. This is why many women come back after rejecting someone. They've seen the contrast. They thought the grass would be greener, but the grass often turns out to be artificial. At first, it's exciting, but excitement fades quickly when it isn't backed by depth. The novelty of new attention is temporary. The stability of genuine care is lasting. So when she starts to encounter disappointment, her mind naturally drifts back to you, not necessarily because she suddenly values you more, but because she can't ignore the way others fall short. The comparison trap works both ways. The more she experiences outside of you, the more she begins to see the uniqueness of what you offered. And ironically, it isn't until you've walked away, until you've detached, that this realization hits the hardest. If you had stayed in her orbit, begging for her attention, she wouldn't have noticed the difference. But your absence magnifies the gap. She remembers the comfort of your presence only after losing it. When women circle back, it's often with this realization weighing heavily on them. The world did not provide better, at least not in the way they imagined. Regret creeps in, not because of sudden love, but because of unmet expectations. The comparison trap leaves them questioning whether they made the right choice, and that doubt draws them back toward you. What you must understand is that their return is often less about destiny and more about disappointment. The more she compares, the more she sees what she gave up. And sometimes that realization is enough to push her back into your life, hoping to reclaim what she once dismissed. Detachment has a strange, magnetic quality that few truly understand. When a woman rejects you, she expects you to hold on, to chase, to fight for her attention. That's the story she has seen play out countless times. Rejection fuels pursuit, and pursuit feeds her sense of power. But when you do the opposite, when you accept the rejection and walk away without bitterness, without drama, without pleading, you create a mystery she can't easily solve. Your calmness unsettles her because it doesn't align with what she anticipated. That very detachment becomes a force that pulls her back in ways desperation never could. Detachment sends a powerful message. You are whole without her. You are not waiting in the shadows for her to change her mind. You are not making her the center of your universe. Instead, you are focused on yourself, your growth, and your path. That shift in energy is felt deeply, even if she doesn't fully understand it. Women are highly intuitive. They can sense when a man's attention has been withdrawn. And when it happens suddenly and silently, it creates curiosity. She wonders why you didn't crumble, why you didn't fight harder, why you seem unaffected. The more she wonders, the more she starts to see you in a different light. The mystery of detachment lies in its unpredictability. Most people react to rejection with emotion, but indifference is rare. Your silence becomes louder than words, your absence more noticeable than presence. Without intending to, you've shifted the balance of power. Now she's the one replaying scenarios in her head, questioning her choice, and feeling the sting of being ignored. Detachment transforms you from someone she rejected to someone she can't stop thinking about. This is why detachment is often misunderstood as a game. But it isn't about pretending not to care. It's about truly valuing yourself enough to move forward with grace. You aren't trying to manipulate her return. You're simply choosing peace over pursuit. And ironically, it is that inner peace that becomes so attractive. A man who doesn't cling, who doesn't beg, who doesn't lose his sense of self over rejection, communicates strength on a level words never could. In that strength, you become unpredictable. She can't categorize you as just another man who couldn't handle rejection. She starts to question if she misjudged you, if maybe you were more valuable than she gave you credit for. That curiosity grows stronger when she sees you thriving, smiling, and building without her. The very detachment that ended her influence over you now becomes the hook that pulls her attention back. When women return after rejecting a man, it's often because detachment shattered their expectations. They thought rejection would leave you chasing, but instead it revealed your independence. And nothing is more mysterious, more compelling than a person who chooses themselves first. That's the quiet power of detachment. It doesn't chase, it attracts. Rejection often begins as a play for validation. When a woman turns you down, it's not always about disliking you. Sometimes it's about testing her own sense of power. In that moment, she feels in control, knowing that your desire for her confirms her worth. It boosts her confidence to see you try, to see you want, to see you seek her approval. But here's where the dynamic changes. When you stop giving that validation, when you refuse to beg or linger in her orbit, the very source of her power vanishes. This sudden shift creates what can only be called a validation reversal. At first, she assumes rejection will put you on a leash. She expects you to prove yourself, to chase harder, to keep reminding her that she is special. But when you don't, she's left with silence, a silence that becomes deafening. The validation she was accustomed to, the attention she counted on, suddenly belongs to someone else, maybe even just to yourself as you pour that energy into your growth. That reversal flips the script. Instead of you seeking her approval, she begins to seek yours. The psychology here is simple but powerful. People crave what they once took for granted. When attention is abundant, it feels ordinary. When it's gone, it feels priceless. Your rejection of her, whether through silence, distance, or a refusal to play into her control, makes her question her own value. She starts to wonder why you aren't still there, why you don't still want her, and why you seem unaffected by losing her. This gnaws at the very ego that rejection once inflated. Validation reversal often draws women back, not because of a sudden surge of love, but because of an unspoken need to feel desired again. It's less about you and more about the emptiness left behind when your attention disappears. She remembers the way you looked at her, the way you made her feel important, and without it, there's a void she doesn't know how to fill. The irony is that the very man she dismissed becomes the very man she wants validation from once more. This is why it's so critical to handle rejection with grace and composure. If you beg, you only confirm her decision to reject you was right. If you detach, you force her to confront the reality that her choice cost her something valuable. Over time, this realization builds into regret, and regret often manifests as curiosity. Curiosity about whether she could still have you, whether she could still capture your attention. The validation reversal is powerful because it turns the tables without you lifting a finger. It transforms her role from the chooser to the seeker, while you stand firm in your self-worth. When she comes back, it's rarely because she suddenly discovered you're perfect. More often, it's because your indifference unsettled her ego, and now she needs to reclaim the validation she once took for granted. Timing plays a bigger role in relationships than most people realize. A woman may reject you not because you weren't good enough, but because at that moment her priorities, emotions, or circumstances didn't align with what you were offering. Maybe she wasn't ready for commitment. Maybe she was distracted by someone else, or maybe she didn't recognize your value in that season of her life. Rejection often has less to do with your worth and more to do with timing. But what happens when life moves forward and she looks back only to realize the choice she made came with a cost? That's when regret sets in, and regret has a powerful way of pulling her back. When people make decisions, they rarely think about long-term consequences in the heat of the moment. She might have assumed you would always be there, waiting in the background, still interested even after rejection. But when you move on, when you grow stronger, when you build a life without her, it disrupts that assumption. Suddenly, the timing she thought was in her favor has shifted against her. She sees you thriving, confident, and possibly admired by others, and regret whispers in her ear, "What if I let go of something rare?" Regret is one of the strongest motivators for people to return. Unlike curiosity or ego, regret is tied to loss: the loss of an opportunity, the loss of a connection, the loss of a person who might not come back again. For a woman who once rejected you, regret can become overwhelming when she realizes she may have underestimated you. In the past, she might have focused on small flaws or distractions, but with time, she sees the bigger picture of who you are becoming. Growth intensifies regret because it highlights the difference between who you were then and who you are now. This is why timing and regret are often linked. What wasn't right before can suddenly feel right later, once maturity, perspective, or circumstances change. She might regret not choosing the man who treated her with respect, the man who was loyal, the man who had vision. But regret doesn't arrive quietly. It often hits hardest when she sees that you no longer need her, when she realizes you've found peace in her absence. That sting of missed timing creates a deep urge to circle back, to test if there's still space for her in your life. However, regret doesn't always mean sincerity. Sometimes it's about her wanting to ease her own discomfort more than genuinely appreciating you. That's why it's important to understand what drives her return. Timing might not have been right before, but if she comes back, it doesn't mean the timing is right now. What matters is whether her regret comes with growth or whether it's just an attempt to rewrite the past. At its core, timing and regret explain why women often revisit doors they once closed. They realize too late that rejection wasn't the end of the story. It was just a chapter shaped by timing. And when regret arrives, it pushes them back toward what they once dismissed, hoping the door hasn't been locked forever. Confidence has an energy that cannot be ignored. When a woman first rejects you, she might see you as uncertain, insecure, or too available. Rejection often happens when she feels she has the upper hand, when your interest seems to outweigh your value in her eyes. But the moment you rebuild yourself, focus on your goals, and step into a version of yourself that radiates confidence, the entire dynamic shifts. Suddenly, the same woman who once dismissed you begins to notice what she overlooked. This is the magnetic power of confidence. It draws people in without you ever having to chase. Confidence is not loud or desperate. It doesn't beg for attention, nor does it seek constant approval. True confidence is quiet strength. It's the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you walk into a room with self-assurance. When you embody this energy after rejection, you show her and everyone else that you are not defined by someone's opinion of you. That shift is powerful because it creates intrigue. She starts to wonder what changed, why you no longer seek her, and why others suddenly seem drawn to you. That curiosity is what often pulls women back. What makes confidence magnetic is that it communicates independence. You no longer project the image of a man who needs her validation to feel complete. Instead, you are whole on your own, and that wholeness is deeply attractive. Most people chase after what they lack, but when you exude confidence, you send the message that you lack nothing. You are in control of your life, your emotions, and your path. This makes her see you differently, not as the man she once rejected, but as the man others admire. And nothing triggers attraction more strongly than the realization that others value what she once dismissed. Confidence also rewrites the story of rejection. When you were uncertain, she felt she could easily dismiss you. But when you grow into yourself and begin to embody strength, she questions whether her judgment was wrong. That doubt is powerful. It unsettles her ego and sparks her desire to re-enter your life. The very traits she may have ignored now become the ones she craves. Your ambition, your discipline, your calmness under pressure, all of it becomes magnetic once wrapped in confidence. What's more, confidence is contagious. It not only changes the way she sees you, but it also changes the way you see yourself. The more you step into it, the less you need her approval, and the more attractive you become in the process. By the time she circles back, it's no longer about her decision, it's about yours. Magnetic confidence puts the power in your hands because now she is the one trying to earn your attention. This is why women so often return after rejecting a man who has grown. They can't resist the gravity of someone who has built himself up, who shines without asking for permission, and who embodies the kind of strength that doesn't fade. Confidence makes you unforgettable. And that magnetism is what draws her back into your orbit. Emotions are a force more powerful than logic, and they linger long after decisions are made. When a woman rejects you, it may feel final on the surface, but the emotional impact of your presence, your words, and your energy does not disappear overnight. Humans remember how they felt more than what was said. Even if she walked away, the moments you shared, the laughter, the subtle gestures, the way you made her feel seen, remain embedded in her mind. Those emotional imprints are difficult to erase and often resurface unexpectedly, pulling her back toward you. Rejection does not erase connection. It merely pauses it. Women often underestimate how much emotions linger beneath conscious thought. She may tell herself she's moved on, that she's focused on something else, but deep down, feelings of familiarity, warmth, and comfort persist. When she notices that you have moved on with grace, that you carry yourself with calm and dignity, those buried emotions resurface with a force she cannot ignore. The contrast between what she expected and what she experiences now triggers a reflection on her choices. Emotional impact is also about the way you made her feel about herself. If you treated her with respect, kindness, and genuine attention, those experiences leave a mark. Even when she rejects you, she remembers the reassurance and validation she received in your presence. These memories create a subtle longing, an unconscious pull that makes her question the path she chose. She starts comparing the emotional resonance she had with you to what she has now, realizing that what she rejected may have been rare and valuable. Moreover, emotions are amplified by absence. When you detach after rejection, your emotional impact is magnified. The silence, the calm, and the distance give her time to reflect. She begins to feel what it was like to have your presence in her life and to lose it. That gap triggers a combination of nostalgia and desire, forcing her to confront emotions she may have ignored or suppressed. The intensity of that realization often drives her to seek closure or reconnection, not just for physical attraction, but because the emotional bond left unfinished resonates deeply. The emotional impact also works subtly through curiosity. She wonders why you remain unshaken, why you didn't crumble, why you appear so grounded despite her rejection. This combination of intrigue and emotional reflection makes her reevaluate her decision. Emotions cannot be faked. Their imprint is real and lasting. When she senses that the connection she once had with you carried more depth than she realized, it awakens feelings of longing, remorse, and in some cases, admiration. Understanding the emotional impact you leave behind explains why women often return after rejecting a man. It is not always rational, nor is it always conscious. It is the memory of how you made her feel, the quiet strength you displayed, and the contrast between what she had and what she lost that drives her curiosity and desire to reconnect. Emotions are subtle, but they are persistent, and they often guide choices more than logic ever could. Life rarely offers perfect timing, and relationships are no exception. When a woman rejects you, it often leaves a story incomplete, a narrative that feels unresolved in both her mind and yours. The unfinished story lingers because it's not just about attraction or compatibility, it's about curiosity, imagination, and the what could have been. She may have walked away thinking she made the right decision, yet deep down, a part of her remains tied to the connection you shared. That sense of incompletion is powerful because humans naturally seek closure, and when closure is denied, the mind continues to replay the past over and over. An unfinished story is inherently magnetic. She may compare her current experiences to what she once had with you, noticing the unique qualities that made you different. Perhaps it was the way you listened, the subtle gestures that made her feel valued, or the calm strength you carried without needing to prove yourself. These moments linger in her memory, forming a picture that remains unfinished. No matter how she tries to convince herself she has moved on, the mind clings to what was left incomplete. That curiosity, that pull toward resolution often drives her back to you, not necessarily because she loves you, but because the narrative remains open. Humans are storytellers by nature. We construct meaning from every interaction, every glance, and every conversation. When a story ends abruptly, it leaves questions unanswered. She may ask herself, did I make a mistake? Could things have been different? Did I truly understand him? These questions echo in her mind, stirring a desire to revisit what was left unresolved. That is why many women return after rejection. They are drawn to the chance to rewrite the story, to test if there is still a chapter to explore, or simply to satisfy the curiosity that lingers. The unfinished story is also emotional. It carries fragments of connection, small moments of intimacy, and shared experiences that cannot easily be replaced. She may find that the relationship she pursued afterward lacked the depth or authenticity she once had with you. The contrast between what she experienced and what she had creates tension, a longing to revisit, reassess, and perhaps reclaim what was left behind. This longing is intensified if she sees you thriving, growing, and unattached, because it signals that the story doesn't necessarily have to remain incomplete. What makes the unfinished story compelling is its open-ended nature. Unlike regret or missed timing, it is not bound by mistakes or circumstance. It exists purely in the realm of curiosity and possibility. She wants to know how the story would have unfolded if circumstances had been different, if she had chosen another path, if she had truly understood your worth. That curiosity, mingled with emotional memory and reflection, often leads her to circle back, hoping to engage with a narrative that never fully ended. Understanding the unfinished story explains why women return after rejection. They are not always coming back because they suddenly value you more, but because the story of what could have been remains alive in their mind. Humans are drawn to resolution, and when the story is left open, it exerts a quiet but irresistible pull, compelling them to seek answers, closure, or simply a chance to rewrite the chapter they once walked away from. In the journey of understanding why women come back after rejecting a man, a clear pattern emerges. It's rarely about sudden love or fate. It's about the dynamics of ego, timing, emotional impact, and perception. Women often return because they sense your growth, confidence, and detachment, qualities they may have underestimated before. Regret, curiosity, and the unfinished story compel them to reconsider, while the reversal of validation and the comparison to others highlight the value they once overlooked. Ultimately, it's not about chasing or pleading, it's about cultivating strength, self-worth, and authenticity. When you focus on yourself, live with purpose, and maintain inner peace, you naturally create an energy that draws people back, not out of necessity, but because they are drawn to the man you've become. The lesson is clear. Rejection is not the end, but a reflection of timing, perception, and growth. And the power always lies with the one who values themselves first.